Hello again and welcome back. Assassination of the president, a bloodless coup, border disputes, regional rival groups fighting for power, foreign troops attempting to combat the power play. These are just some incidents that have gone down in Somalian political history since its independence back in 1960. So if we just take a step back, what does this turbulent history mean for the region and for the rest of the world? Well, since Somalia descended into civil war in 1992, more than 15 transitional governments have come and gone, but violence has persisted. UN peacekeepers came and left in 1995, having failed in their mission. In 2004, a weak transitional government backed by the US and Ethiopia came into power. The opposition Islamic Courts Union, under the leadership of Sheikh Sharif Ahmed, took control of Mogadishu in June 2006. In December that year, Ethiopian troops entered Somalia and helped the government force the ICU out of the capital. The US put many top leaders of this movement on its terrorism list. Then, in mid-2007, the African Union sent a peacekeeping force to Somalia. But the AU troops have been largely ineffective and understaffed. In September 2007, Sheikh Ahmed joined the Alliance for the Re-Liberation of Somalia, a new opposition group formed in Eritrea. In 2008, the ARS signed a peace treaty with the transitional government. In December of that year, the president of Somalia resigned. Shortly after that, Ethiopia pulled its troops out of Somalia. And now, after parliamentary elections, the country has a new leader, Sheikh Sharif Ahmed. Well, still with us are our guests in Detroit, Michigan, Dr. Abdi Kuso, in Columbus, Ohio, Abuka Arman, and in Oslo, Stig Hansen. Mr. Hansen, I'd like to start with you. The fragility of the situation is really very hard to overemphasize, isn't it? There's a whole generation who've pretty well grown up in a completely lawless country. The new man needs help and he needs regional and international cooperation. In what direction do you think he'll look?
I think you're right. I think one thing that's really important is to build up the new security force and to give actually security for the population on the ground. Unfortunately, this was the big failure of the TFG, so there needs to be some kind of support building up a believable security force. Sheikh Sharif has been doing that before. During the ICU, they managed to improve the situation in Mogadishu drastically. However, if he fails doing this, I think he will lose a lot of local support and perhaps also lose the game itself. So it might be serious if he fails doing this. The international institutions that tried to help the TFG, well, they were not so efficient the first time around. So maybe the international institutions that's supposed to help him maybe not be up to the task, really. Secondly, he faced the dilemma of AU forces. AU forces, they are used as an excuse by the Al-Shabab to continue attacks against them in Mogadishu. At the same time, a larger component of AU forces might actually stabilize the situation. This is a big dilemma for Sheikh Sharif, I think.
Abdi Kuso, Stig Hansen there talked of the popular support. Where do you think this popular support has come from? Is it genuinely from within the country, or is it, as some people have suggested, that perhaps it's come from outside and that Sheikh Sharif is just merely a puppet of, regional powers and perhaps international powers like the US?
I would think that at least compared to the previous government, the support of Sheikh Sharif probably comes from inside and from the Somali people, at least not in the sense that they actually prefer one president to another one, but I think, as you understand, the Somali people have been in this situation for more than 20 years, and therefore they are willing to accept anybody who gives an olive branch. And in this case, they are willing to give the benefit of the doubt. Now, if I just point out one thing, though, the problem is this, that and I pointed out earlier, the assumption is that if what happens in Mogadishu does not necessarily translate in what happens outside Mogadishu. And we have to understand that if Sheikh Sharif is able to bring Mogadishu into peace today, that does not necessarily translate into Bosaso, into Kismayo, into Galkayo, into Bayda. That is a serious problem. The other problem is that the international community over the last 20 years has basically decided to contain Somalia rather than to genuinely help. So when you take the two things together, the problem that's inside Somalia Somalia, and the role of the international community. And if you take these two factors together, you will see a grim future here.
Okay, and part of that future, I mean, in the past there's been a lot of talk about that Somalia has been used as a base by organizations linked to terrorism. Abuka Armin, how credible do you think these links are?
Well, these are some allegations that was used as pretext. That's not to say, of course, you would not have any person who has ill intention to come into a country that did not have a government for the last 20 years. But to indicate that there is a link to the extent in which the international media, specifically in the U.S., has been propagating, so to speak, is erroneous. There has not been proof of that. But as I said in my statement, in the beginning of my statement, you would always have, if you have a chaotic, failed state that has all the gates open, some people to come in. But these are not entities that justify the invasion of Ethiopia or the bombardment of the U.S. in the last 2 years, 2 years ago. So all of these things in mind, Sheikh Sharif and hopefully the new government would be mindful of the importance of establishing peace with neighboring countries and reaching out to the international community for better diplomatic ties and so forth. And I think that process has already begun. The U.S. has congratulated his election and congratulated the new president. And he, in turn, are issuing a statement of the importance of having the U.S. and the international community in general to play a positive role in the reestablishment of peace and security in Somalia and rebuilding that country.
But in the end, Stig Hansen, shouldn't it be a Somali-based solution to the problems that they face?
I think one of the problems previously during the different peace process is that it has been all governed from outside. In one sense, it's been top-down. I think the local security situations is, to a certain extent, ignored by the international community and has been ignored. I think you have to deliver locally in order to gain the necessary popularity to produce a durable solution. And this, I think, is very important to keep in mind when we try to address the Somali problem.
So when we talk locally, we're talking clan politics, and in a sense, I suppose you could draw a parallel to Afghanistan and the disparate clans there and how to make any sense of the problem there. And it really comes down to the ability of the new ruler to unite the parties within the country as a whole, and certainly within the Somali government. Isn't that the case, Dr. Kuso?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we have to realize is that the main thing that underlies the different opposition groups sometimes can be translated as being anchored on the idea of clan identities. Now, of course, as a sociologist, I understand that clan identities are basically social construction and amenable to time. But what we have today is the idea of vulnerabilities that manifest themselves into clan identities. Here, suppose if a third party comes to Somalia in order to help with the negotiation, it is understood that that third party might be, for example, the side of one particular clan or the other one. And so the problem is that it is about vulnerabilities, and, for example, any outcome is perceived by one clan or the other as it being against their own interests. So unless we are able to really eliminate these vulnerabilities, we will actually face this problem a long time to come. The idea of clan identity is not just the mere clan identity itself, but it translates itself, as I said, in these vulnerabilities. And if people are suffering, if people do not have any opportunities and employment, then they are a fertile ground for any ideological, any clan sentiment, and so forth, and so forth. And that is a serious problem as we move forward.
Okay, gentlemen, I'd just like to begin to wrap this up. You know, at the moment in the world at large, there's a general feeling of optimism in world diplomacy right now. Has it spread to Somalia? Do you find room in your heart for hope right now? Let me start with you, Abukar Ahmed.
Yes, I think the election of the new president could not have come at a better time. Internationally, starting with the U.S., the pendulum started to swing back. There's a lot of positive energy, and globally the same way. And President Obama's election has proven that there is a genuine effort to reach out, specifically by the United States and generally the international community, to accept certain things that were not acceptable in the last 8 years. To be an Islamist and to be congratulated and once you are elected as a president was a very rarity in the last 8 years, of course. So things are changing, and that positive energy, that diplomatic change in the global atmosphere, of course, is an opportunity for the new president to capitalize on that and to reach out. As we recall, President Obama's inauguration speech, it included if the Muslim
We've got to wrap up pretty soon. I just want to bring in Stig Hansen on this, on the Obama factor, the feel-good, the positive energy that you're talking about there. Stig Hansen, very briefly, if you will, do you think that this will apply to Somalia too?
I think it will, regardless what Obama do in many ways, because I think the Somalis have been watching what's happening in the world, and this positive spirit influenced them. So it gives an extra asset. But again, local security, how to manage grievances from the Darod clan, and how to manage Harakat Al-Shabab, who is very different ideologically, at least amongst the leadership. That would be local challenges that has to be dealt with, but this gives an extra advantage.
Okay, gentlemen, we appreciate your time in Detroit, Michigan, Dr. Abdi Kuso, in Columbus, Ohio, Abukar Ahmed, and in Oslo, Stig Hansen. Thanks very much indeed for all your perspectives. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We do, of course, welcome your comments and your suggestions. Do please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Bye for now.